All right, and welcome back. We are day 2 of this teardown of this 1970 Chevy pickup. We're going to be ripping out the remaining portion of the front clip here. I got a bolt that did not want to come out. It's slipping on the top, which is interesting because there's no way to hook a wrench or anything on the top of it, so I got to cut that one out. And then we're going to go ahead and get the wire harness all unclipped, everything off there and labeled. Then we're going to go after the master cylinder and do some basic things on the front of the engine, but not gonna take out much of the engine today. In fact, we're not gonna be taking out the engine until we pull off the cab, so that way it's a lot easier to get to the transmission and everything else. But next up after that will be the interior, and we'll see what we can tackle today. All right, so at this point I got most of the brake lines taken off the master cylinder. I have not drained the master cylinder. I do have this to catch anything underneath it. I did go ahead and take off these bolts here, but in order to make the full removal, I gotta go on the inside of the cab. We gotta find out where the brake pedal is attached, because the attachment point needs to come out before we are able to do anything at all. And that's the attachment point right there. So we'll disconnect that and see if we can pull out the master cylinder. Okay, so in order to get the linkage bolt off, you actually have to have access to the other side, because the other side has basically a bolt head on it. And then you actually have to take off this panel here, which is 4 bolts, which then gives you a little bit easier access to the linkage. All right, so in order to get that linkage bolt out of there, the steering column actually has to come down. So you gotta take this cover off here and then loosen those 2 bolts, and that allows the linkage to come, the column to come down. Probably gonna have to also loosen up that over there. All right, so normally you'd wanna make sure you go ahead and keep these bolts attached that attach the strap across the column. But because I already took them off because I was trying to get to the brake linkage, I'm gonna put this box here that will help hold the column up so it doesn't fall out. I'm gonna come over here and loosen up this right here, this strap that's gonna be clamping down on that, and then we'll take off this retainer collar. All right, now that we got that clamp off, I'm gonna be taking off this bolt here and trying to get that retainer collar off of there so we can drop the steering column all the way down. All right, like many others have already talked about, this clamp right here has this bolt that goes through it. This bolt that goes through it is essentially what keeps the splines from sliding off through that area right there. So this little flat spot. That flat spot then aligns perfectly with this bolt. So when you put it back together, you gotta make sure that everything lines up just perfect, spline for spline, so then that way the bolt can slide in there just right. So don't try to tap on this or rip it out, because you're not gonna be able to do it until you take this bolt out of your clamp there. All right, so you're gonna go ahead and this harness is going to plug into your main harness in there, and so you want to label it attached to steering column, so that way you know where to put it back. This one looks like it has some type of jumper on it, just attached to the aftermarket wiring harness. So once you feed that up through here, it's got to go up through and around, down through. Once you're there, you can go ahead and pull out the column after you wiggle that down there, because it's going to take some wiggling just to get the linkage for the transmission through the firewall. We're gonna attempt to do this with one person. I'm gonna slide this up. Linkage goes around. Let's see if I can get it through. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to by myself. Oh, there we go. And she's out. So as I tore into this heater core, you'll notice that it looked like it had been leaking, which is probably why the previous owner disconnected it.